Hello guys, gals, and non-binary pals, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I got a haircut. Thank you to my roommate who cuts my hair for me. Well, another April 1st has come and gone, and that means that the r/fantasy bingo has entered a new year. I'm not quite sure why they start their bingo on April 1st of the year, but I imagine it's to let people have the chance to kind of catch up on books published the previous year, etc. Hello. You wanna lay down? I'm filming right now. This is the bingo board in all its glory. I'm really excited about this. I was so excited on March 31st to wake up on April 1st and get all of these new prompts. The way that this challenge works is there are, as you can see, this 5x5 card. You can complete a bingo or you can do a blackout. I did a blackout last year. I'm hoping to do one again this year. There is a hard mode for each card. I'm not super interested in those. I'm already kind of doing my own themed cards, so I don't want to add hard mode on top of that. You can do one reread, and you can substitute one square for a square from a previous year if you're just not finding something that's working for you. My themed card this year is going to be all queer books, so that's all books with queer protagonists. Now the dog is laying on the rug. It's a better spot for her. So I'm going to go through my TBR for this bingo. This isn't the final list of what I'm going to be reading, but it is what I have planned currently. I also am setting a kind of rule for myself that I can't double up with these prompts and prompts of other challenges that I'm doing. So I'm doing Books and Lala's Buzzword Readathon. I'm doing the r/Feel Gaze SFF Spring and Summer Reading Challenge. And no, that's it. I can't double up on any of those prompts, but I am including my 26 books to read in 2026 on some of these prompts. So for the first square on the first row, trans and non-binary protagonist, I decided to go with A Long and Speaking Silence by Nevo. This is the next book in the Singing Hills cycle. I don't remember what it's about, but I just read all of these books when they come out. The non-binary main character is a cleric named Chi who wanders the land of the Singing Hills, listening to people's stories and writing them down. They're always a novella, and cleric Chi is usually just kind of a observer within the story and is sometimes involved, but is usually just witnessing the situation. I identify a lot with cleric Chi. I love seeing this long-running series of adventure stories with a non-binary protagonist. And this one comes out in May or June, I think, so I can't get to this one yet. For Judge a Book by its title, I'm going to be reading This Night Topples Empires by Rye Herman. This actually also has a non-binary protagonist. This is the, not exactly sequel, but kind of standalone sequel to This Princess Kills Monsters by Rye Herman. The main character of This Night Topples Empires is a minor character in that book. The main character of this book is from a small island kingdom, and I think that they are returning to it after some time away to help liberate it. I saw a book with Night in the title and a non-binary protagonist, and I already like this author, so it was kind of a no-brainer, and I already have it pre-ordered even though it comes out this fall. Oh, and I forgot to mention, and I'll point these out when they come up, there are a few books on this list that were not already on my TBR, and I had to find ones that fit the prompt. I had to do that for some books for last year's bingo, and I found that I really didn't like those books that I read just for the prompt. So I've marked them, and I'm going to see how I feel about them reading them this year. So for the translated square, I'm planning on reading But Not Too Bold by Hache Puyo. Ache, maybe? This is translated from Brazilian Portuguese. The author actually did the translation themselves. And this is a queer retelling of Bluebeard, where Bluebeard is a giant spider lady. And it's a novella. I heard there's some monster fucking, which is not usually my thing, but I honestly, like, I can't tell you why. My favorite fairy tale is Bluebeard, so this one was kind of already on my radar, and it's a novella, so I think it'll be pretty quick to get through, and I'm just curious to see how that goes. For self-pressed or small published, small press small press or self-published. I'm planning on reading Embodied Exegesis, which is a short story collection by Neon Hemlock, a queer publisher. This is a short story collection of all trans feminine cyberpunk stories. I own this on my Kobo, meaning to get to it for ages, so this is finally the year that I get to it. For Unusual Transportation, this is one of the books I own. I'm planning on reading Blackfish City by Sam J. Miller. Actually, the Unusual Transportation itself is pictured on the cover. One of the, I believe, main characters or like focal characters is a woman who comes into this city riding an orca, like a robotic orca, I think. Sam J. Miller is a queer author, and this is set in the future in this floating city, and I think it's a little bit like cyberpunk neo-noir. I know that there are like multiple protagonists, but I really don't know anything else about it. I bought this secondhand ages ago, but Sam J. Miller did write a short story that I love called Let All the Children Boogie, so I'm hoping that I like his work in long form as well. For the afterlife, I'm going to be reading, and actually I'm currently reading, The 7 Moons of Molly Almeida by Shehan, bear with me, Karunatilaka. I'm listening to this on audio, and this one is really hard to get through. It's not bad, it's just absolutely brutal. This is written in second person, and the main character is a gay photojournalist in Sri Lanka in 1988 or 1989, and he is dead. He was brutally murdered, and he has 7 moons or days to be a ghost on Earth before he passes on, and he can go wherever the wind takes him, wherever his body is, or wherever his name is spoken. And so his boyfriend and best friend are trying to figure out what happened to him, trying to find his body, trying to find out who killed him, where his photos are, because he has all of these photos that could topple the government potentially, but they're this MacGuffin of like various people have them and where are the negatives for them and all of that. It's quite intense. Molly is not a good person, but also like he died in a really horrible way, and so you want to find out what happened to him. And also there's that kind of like gut punch every time of the narrators telling you like, you cheated on your boyfriend all these times and you got brutally killed and chopped up. And so that is a very visceral way to experience this story. I'm pacing myself through it. It's not bad, it's just really hard to take in large doses, so I'm listening to it a little bit at a time. The next square is Game Changer, which is a competition book. I don't like competition books. I love The Raven Scholar, but I think that is like way outstrips, you know, the echelons of other competition books. So I used my one substitution, and I had compiled a list of squares that I might want to substitute, and I substituted Ocean Setting for The Salvage by Anbara Salam. Anbara Salam is a Palestinian Scottish author. This is sort of a horror book, but it involves diving and shipwrecks, something that scares me. I'm hoping to read this for Mermay, actually, and the main character is a queer woman, so I'm really intrigued by this. It doesn't have a great average rating, but I want to be the one that rates it highly. For Vacation Spot, this is a real or fictional place that you'd like to visit. I'll be reading Lady Eve's Last Con by Rebecca Framo. This is actually another book that I'm picking up because I liked a short story by the author. This author has a great short story in the short story collection Consolation Songs, which I don't know if anyone else read. It was indie published. This is a retelling of the like classic black and white film All About Eve, about a con woman and her sister, and it takes place on a cruise in space, which sounds fun, and I'm sure nothing will go wrong with it. Next, for short stories, you can read any 5 short stories, but I have difficulty reading just a short story by itself because it's not part of a book that I can log, and I'm very goal-oriented, but I have lots of anthologies to choose from, and in fact I'm choosing one that I own, which is Right Here, the best queer speculative fiction of 2021. Had this one for a while, should really read it, it's not that long. And it has some authors that I've already discussed, including H. Puyo and Sam J. Miller. And this is another Neon Hemlock book, as a matter of fact. I don't know if they're still publishing these. I think maybe the last one was published in 2024, but I hope that they keep doing them because I think it's such a great concept. For older protagonist, I'll be reading Shoestring Theory by Mariana Costas. I gotta pause the video to talk about this book. I don't know if anyone else is familiar with this, and this is actually a phenomenon that I've only observed from afar, but in the Hobbit film fandom, specifically in the Bag and Shield ship, which is people shipping Thorin and Bilbo, there is a really common trope of a time-traveling fix-it-fic where Bilbo or Thorin, usually Bilbo, after Bilbo like dies or gets older, or after like Thorin wakes up in the afterlife, they are able to go back in time with all of their memories and do the plot over again. I imagine that this started with a single fic that got really popular and then other people imitated it. I also don't think this is a trope that originates in the Hobbit fandom, but it doesn't have a fan lore page. But it's something that, like, I have noticed, and I don't even read fanfiction for that fandom. I started reading one, it was really good, and I had to put it down, but I will get back to it someday, but I was riveted, it was really good. But this book, Shoestring Theory, is that premise. And I gotta know if it started as a Bag and Shield fanfiction. Mariana Costas, hit me up, let me know. I'm dying to know. This book starts with the main character who's a wizard at kind of the end of the world. His husband was the king of this country and went mad and kind of like broke the world. This is him years after the fact. He's an old man. He decides to perform one last big spell, which is to go back in time in his younger body and try and prevent his husband from like ruining everything. But he accidentally also brings his husband's consciousness with him, so they're both back in their younger bodies and trying to prevent the husband from like going mad again. And you see where the Thorin character, I'm starting to like get some inklings. Anyway, it just seems so intriguing. It's one of my 26 books to read in 2026, and I was really glad to have an excuse to read it for this bingo. Really interesting squares, we've got Duology Part 1 and Duology Part 2. They do not have to be the same duology. In fact, I will be reading different books. So for Duology Part 1, I'm reading a book that I'm so excited for, which is a new Becky Chambers book, As You Wake, Break the Shell. I've been a Becky Chambers fan since Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I think I became a fan after A Close and Common Orbit came out, but every year since then I've read her new release as soon as it's come out. I think that To Be Taught If Fortunate is the best novella ever written, so I'm just over the moon to have a new Becky Chambers book after the last Monkey Robot book came out several years ago. I don't want to know anything about this book. I know I'm gonna like it, but I know that it is a sapphic love story told in dual timelines, and it is sci-fi. For r/fantasy book club, I will be reading The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling. I really liked The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling last year. The ending fell apart, but the vibes and the poly relationship, immaculate. No complaints. Had a grand old time. This is a sci-fi horror, and it's somehow going to be a sapphic romance. I think it's quite toxic. There's caving, there's an isolated woman, and this sounds like kind of exactly what I need right now. For published in 2026, I will be reading literally my most anticipated book of the decade, Daggerbound by T. Kingfisher. This is the sequel to one of my favorite books of all time, Sword Heart. Oh, I gotta gush about this. I went on a big long tangent in my most anticipated books of 2026 video talking about Daggerbound, and I was like, I really hope Zale is in this because Zale's my favorite character. They're a non-binary lawyer, like lawyer cleric. I love them so much. They're so aspirational to me. But KJ Charles, who's a romance author that I like, reviewed this book and confirmed that Zale is in it. God, my soul left my body. I'm so excited for this book. This is about a man who's trapped in a sword and his love interest, and it's gay. And you know what? Just go read. I don't want to go over it again. I'm just so excited for it. Go read the synopsis yourself. But yes, this is coming out this summer. I could conceivably request an arc, but that would be like having Christmas come early and then not be able to celebrate Christmas. Like, I want to celebrate the book, Christmas, when it comes out with everyone else. I don't want to spoil it or anything. I'm just so excited for it. I might even, honestly, I might take the day off when it comes out so I can read it. For Explorers and Rangers, which is read a book with a character who is out in the wilderness tracking stuff or exploring, I will be reading A Covenant of Ice by Karen Loeche. This is the third book in a series of novellas about dragon riders. This setting reminds me a little bit of like Wild West colonial America. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but basically there are these several different countries that are kind of embroiled, and one has colonized the other, and there's been a war, and this series is kind of about the fallout of that war and the effect that it has on the three main characters. There is a gay couple, and then their competent, cool woman friend. Each of the books has been from a different character's perspective, and so this one is about a character that we've read about but haven't actually seen his POV yet, and he bonds to a dragon. These books are kind of like understated. You're kind of like at a remove from the characters' emotions, but all the characters are very like mature and adult. They're not high on action, but the main characters are like living out in the woods and exploring and riding dragons. For Duology Part 2, I'll be reading The Brightness Between Us by Elliot Schreffer, which is a sequel to The Darkness Outside Us, which is, I gotta say, you think going into it that this is gonna be like a sci-fi romance, the first book, and then it turns into like, and it's YA, it turns into like psychological sci-fi horror almost, and it reminded me of being a kid and my dad making me watch 2001: A Space Odyssey and going like, oh no, that's what's going on? Wild. So I can't tell you much about the second book because it would spoil kind of the conceit of the first book and the big twist, but this is dual timeline, there's a gay couple, and like the first book, it is sci-fi. For one word title, I'm going to read Amberlow by Laura Elena Donnelly, and I want to listen to this one on audiobook because it's read by Mary Robinette Kowal, who's one of my favorite authors right now and also a prolific audiobook narrator. This is a sort of, I don't know what the word is for, like, it's not alternate history, but it's like our world with the names changed and no magic. So it's like, it's technically fantasy, but it's just fantasy because it's in a secondary world. But this is a world very similar to the Weimar Republic, so like 1930s Berlin, and starting to see the beginnings of fascism. The main characters are, I believe, a gay couple and their cool woman friend. Wild how often that pairing comes up. One is a spy, one is a nightclub owner, and then the woman is, I believe, a singer at the nightclub, all trying to kind of like survive this new regime. I tried listening to this on audio like 8 years ago, but I wasn't ready for the more mature themes. I hadn't quite like started reading books with a lot of sex in them yet, and I remember the like first few chapters being kind of like explicit, and I was like, oh, I'm not ready for that yet. Hadn't read Cat Sebastian yet or KJ Charles. But now I think I'm fully mature and ready to read this book and hope that I enjoy it. It's the first in a trilogy, so I may end up finding a new series. For non-human protagonist, I'll be reading Of Monsters and Mainframes by Barbara Truelove. I have a confession to make. I had seen this book before, but hadn't looked into it at all because, watcher, I thought this was the same as Ministry of Time. Look at the cover! It looks like the cover of Ministry of Time. And so I didn't give it a second thought, and then one day I actually read the back, and I was like, what the actual? It's like Hammer horror monsters, including Dracula, in space, and the main character is a spaceship. Wild. Can't wait to get to this one. For middle grade, this is actually a book that I was not originally on my TBR that I'll be reading just for this bingo board, but it's a book that I probably would have picked up anyway. It's by Marco Shiro, an author that I've read from before, and it's a very cute premise. So this is obviously a middle grade book about this kid who's being bullied, and he finds this room in his school that is magically linked to rooms in 2 other schools. So he meets these other kids that are also, like, I believe, hiding out from bullies, and they're able to, like, all talk to each other across the country by going into this magical room. So that seems super fun. I love middle grade. It's just that I didn't have on my TBR specifically a science fiction or fantasy queer middle grade, so it wasn't all that hard to find something that I would be interested in for this square. For First Contact, a book that I'm very glad that I waited to read until it was eligible to be read for this bingo, i.e. after April 1st, and that is Failure to Communicate by Kaya Sonderby. I've owned this for a while on my e-reader. I'm actually reading it for an upcoming video, so I need to read it pretty soon here. This is about a woman who's part of a crew of people that specifically go have first contacts with aliens, and there's been a lot of, like, basically eugenics where people are genetically modifying their kids before they're born, and this character is one of the only people in the last, few generations to be born autistic. But that makes her uniquely good at talking to aliens, and so she gets put in a situation where she has a first contact with these aliens who might wage war, and I think she falls in love with them, and it might be Polly. So neat. For murder mystery, I'm so glad that I had this one in my back pocket. I'll be reading Bang Bang Bodhisattva by Aubrey Wood. This is a near future cyber noir with a trans woman as the main character, and something about, like, she has a friend who's a PI who thinks he's in the Maltese Falcon, and someone gets murdered and she has to clear her name. I checked it out from the library and I just wasn't in the mood for it, so I returned it, but it did seem really funny, so looking forward to getting back to it. The next square is Cat Squasher, which is a book that has to be over 500 pages. I only had 2 that applied, but I'll be reading a book that I am looking forward to. I just have never had the chance to get to it. Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. I think this is actually the only book on my list where the main character is asexual. I believe the main character here is demisexual, and this is a kind of a retelling of The Goose Girl. It's YA, and the main character was raised from childhood by death and fortune. So cool. This one comes highly recommended, but I've also heard don't read the rest of the series. Just read this one as a standalone, so that's kind of what I plan to do. The next square is Feast Your Eyes on This. Food or a significant meal has to be important to the plot. I was so mad. I have a book that would work perfectly, it's just not queer. So I went with one that was not already on my TBR, but it seems fun and cute. It's a cozy fantasy with a non-binary main character called Field Guide for the Formerly Villainous by Autumn K. England. It actually reminds me of The Wretch and the Scoundrel by Jasmine Walls, where a cultist who is getting mind controlled, the monster mind controlling them dies, and they suddenly find out that they're free, and they're like, great, I didn't want to be part of that cult, I'm gonzo. And so they go a la Stardew Valley, buy a farm, and start living in this little town. I believe that there is a paladin librarian as the love interest, and so this seems cute. I don't usually go for cozy fantasy, but non-binary main character, they did get me. For published in the 1970s, it was actually speculated on the r/fantasy subreddit before the bingo came out that this was going to be one of the squares, and so I'd kind of researched some beforehand because I didn't have any currently on my TBR. So I'm going with Watchtower by Elizabeth A. Lynn. I don't know that I'm gonna like this, but I do have a soft spot for queer fiction from the 20th century. This was published in 1979. I purchased this, it's on its way from thrift books because I couldn't get it at any library for love or money. I've heard that it's a pretty typical fantasy story. There's people guarding this eponymous watchtower, and they're lesbians. But it's less than 250 pages, so I figure if I don't like it, I won't have to read it for very long. For politics and court intrigue, I'll be reading A Villain's Hope by S.E. McPherson. I should have read this a little bit ago because it came out March 31st and I actually received an ARC from the author, so I'm very sorry, S.E. McPherson, that I did not read the ARC that you so generously provided for me. Around the time that I was supposed to be reading this, I had really bad sci-fi brain, so I could not force myself to read this book, but I'm looking forward to it. So this is a sequel to A King's Trust, which I highly rated and loved last year, and it is chock-a-block full of court intrigue. It's a poly fantasy romance. In the previous book, lots of stuff happened, but the prince, who is the main character, became the king, married this noblewoman, and his bodyguard got some bad magical stuff happened to him, and so this book is kind of like the fallout of that, and this book is from the bodyguard's perspective. And finally, for the author of Color Square, I'll be reading Devil of the Deep by Valencia Jean-Francois. It's actually a book that comes out today, the day that I'm filming this, and this seems really cool. I'm also hoping to read this for Mermay. This is inspired by Haitian culture, I believe, and the main characters are I believe, if I'm not mistaken, one of them is a trans man, then there is a lady pirate, and they broke up. She's trying to protect a mermaid, he's trying to hunt the mermaid. Magic, ships abound. This is a republished version of a self-published book of the same name, and so I'm waiting for the newly released copy to come in at the library so I can read it in May. That is my TBR for the r/fantasy book bingo. So excited for this. Once I finish Seven Moons of Molly Almeida, I feel like I can really hit the ground running. It's just kind of a slow one to start with. But I gotta remember to pace myself, not try and read everything before, the first 6 months of the challenge. And hopefully, unlike last year, I won't have to do a last-minute switcheroo and read something short for a square because I didn't get to it. Thanks to the r/fantasy mods for putting on this bingo. I'll link down below to the original challenge post so you can follow along if you would like. Thanks again for watching. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week with another video. Bye!